So why is there so much attention in this election to the Mahila voter? Who holds the cards when it comes to the woman voter of Bihar? What do the trends suggest, particularly from the last three elections held in Bihar from 2010 to 2020? My colleague Akshita Nandgopal now breaks it down for us, the Mahila voter. Over to you, Akshita.
Thanks very much, Rajdeep. Let's begin by taking a look at what really the vote percentage of women voters in Bihar has been in previous elections. This election, about 3.5 crore women voters will be casting their vote. But you take a look back and it's increased, which is great news, from 2010 to 2015 to 2020. That number has only gone up. In 2020, for example, the last election in Bihar, it was at 62.57. Compare that and contrast that to men voters in Bihar, which is about 54%. And you see why there's so much focus and attention on the women vote. But let's go back also and take a look at which way women voted in the previous elections in Bihar. If we were to break it down for you between the Mahagathbandhan, NDA and others, it was close. In 2020, 38% of women chose the NDA, 37% chose the Mahagathbandhan, 25% chose the other parties also in the fray. So this, of course, is something that shows you that it was very close between each of these parties, that there wasn't a very clear mandate that came in from the women voters to any one side. But also let's talk about representation. You know, we're looking at a whole lot of promises that are coming in. What exactly is the representation for women, for the Mahila in the Bihar Assembly? So in 2010, it was about 14%, about 34 women MLAs were there in the Bihar Assembly. In 2015, that number unfortunately came down. I showed you an earlier graphic where you had the number of women voters going up, but almost in sharp contrast to that, here you've got a downward graph where every election that number comes down, unfortunately. So from 34 in 2010 to 2020, you had 23 women MLAs. That's it. 23 women MLAs, and that's something to seriously talk about. Let's also take a look at really what kind of representation has been given to women in different parties. If I were to look at really the number of women candidates, the highest would be with the RJD. In the 143 seats that they're contesting, 24 women candidates have been fielded. But if I were to break that down to a percentage based on how many seats they're contesting, then it's actually, in fact, the HAM, Manji's party, that's giving the maximum representation to women because of the 6 seats they're contesting. 2 are women candidates. At 33%, they're having the maximum representation. Again, a number that I'd say is seriously wanting here. We should be talking about greater representation of women. These parties, while trying to woo women voters, perhaps should also walk the talk. And what perhaps could help the most is actually having representation of the Mahila, which unfortunately you don't see in the form of women candidates or, for that matter, in the assembly. Let's also take a look at the promises that have been put forth. They're not walking the talk clearly, but they're going all out to woo women voters in Bihar. And both sides are guilty of doing that. Each of them putting forth their own schemes. You had the NDA announcing a scheme for rural women called Jivika Nidhi. And then you've got, as a response to that, the Mahagathbandhan to counter that particular scheme, announcing permanent jobs and saying that this is for Jivika Didi. So it's a direct, take on of that particular scheme. They've announced, the NDA said direct bank transfers to women groups. The Mahagathbandhan has said 30,000 rupees per month. This is a salary essentially as part of the Jivika Didi scheme that they have announced. 10,000 rupees dispersed to 75 lakh women via DBT. And this was considered, this was something, of course, that the NDA has spoken of and has done. The Mahagathbandhan has announced that they will ensure interest-free loans for 2 years. This is something that Tejashwi Yadav has announced clearly to counter the NDA. 105 crores out of 1,000 crores has already been released by the NDA in a big move to woo the Mahila. The Mahagathbandhan has announced, on the other hand, that if they are brought to power, they will ensure an insurance cover. Besides job, besides going ahead and ensuring a loan waiver, insurance cover of up to 5 lakh rupees is something the Mahagathbandhan has also promised. Pensions increased to 1.1K per month by the NDA in the run-up to the election. The Mahagathbandhan has announced that all contract workers will be made permanent. So these are, in fact, the promises that have been made by both sides for women. It's, of course, promises that are coming in for the election season. Women voters will be feeling extremely important. But I do wish, Rajdeep, that it lasts beyond the election season as well.
Well, we have many more women in the newsroom than it seems political parties have at the moment. And that's the good news when it comes to newsrooms, particularly television newsrooms compared to political parties. But appreciate you giving us those details, Akshita.